Hello everyone. In the previous two videos, I have told you about the birth of the universe and the truth about us. This is not only to help make it easier to accept a new system of thought, that of God, but also to hasten our return to our true heavenly home. For in this world we are but strangers. Before I go any further, I would like to state one more thing. As a narrator, I also recognize that there are many pleasures in this illusory world. However, I have to tell you frankly that these pleasures are nothing compared to the true nature of the Son of the Lord. The pleasures of the world are fleeting, like a cloud of smoke, and all that you have will become a sound in the valley of silence when death comes, leaving nothing behind. Therefore, I will continue to tell you about the true path to freedom from suffering. This practice permeates every aspect of life. And this time, the truth is not in a church or in a temple. Because this time, the truth is in everyone's ordinary life in worldly relationships. Before we dive into this exploration, I want to make two key points clear once again that will help us all embark on the path of practice more easily. First, why do we need a system of thought to undo all the troubles of the human world? Secondly, what are the rules for the operation of sins in the human world? Let's continue to explore these questions together and begin our journey of cultivation. I'm Chong Wei Chiang from the website of The Way to Miracles, and in the first two chapters of this message, I've talked in detail about the origins of you in the world and about why the subconscious mind is manipulating your self-consciousness to take the world seriously. Then, when you understand the truth, you actually have to understand that when you persistently recognize the world as true in your thinking, you will persistently have some of the most basic psychic experiences, which can be summarized in a few words: joy, anger, sadness, grief, and fear. 1. Happiness. The sense of security that arises when your wishes and needs are met. For example, your material life has been secured, or you have an ideal relationship. All those will make you happy. 2. Anger. Attacking others because they do not meet your requirements, or fighting back because they have wronged innocent you. 2. Worry. You worry that you, 1, get a certain relationship or some worldly fame and fortune, or worry that your future is not as good as your present situation. For grief, you will feel sad for losing something you have, including the death of relatives, etc. 5. Fear. That is dread, and all kinds of fear are always following everyone. One of the most characteristic fears is that you feel guilty about something you did in the past, so you fear some retribution in the future, which upsets you. These are some of the most basic heartfelt feelings in the world, and they are all based on your mental judgment of all the characters and events. And you have never stopped mental judgment in your life, so that you will be constantly experiencing those feelings in heart. Such is the function of mental judgment. Every different mental judgment is bound to bring different heartfelt feelings, so thinking always leads the way. In the world, everyone first uses his thinking to judge everything in the world and then takes action. And the purpose of this mental judgment and action is clear: to get as many good heartfelt feelings as possible and avoid some bad, heartfelt feelings. This is an ability and the greatest pursuit for people to live in this world. However, most of what people experience in the course of life are not good heartfelt feelings, and even if people have got some good heartfelt feelings, they cannot keep these experiences for a long time. You can understand it after just thinking. For example, when you were poor, you thought that you would be satisfied when you had money. But now you are rich, but are you satisfied? Or you thought that if you got married, you would be secure. But now that you are married, do you feel secure? Or you are now the head of a big group, but are you really relaxed? The answers to these questions are self-evident. In this world, there seems to be a defect in people's heart that can never be filled. When people get what they want and acquire the good heartfelt feelings, you will find these things have no value, and before long all kinds of new troubles and deficiencies came into being. Then people will begin a new pursuit. In the end, this state becomes a cycle of to seek but not find, and this endless loop is like a spell that follows you until the death. Therefore, human beings' life can be summarized as the saying, people will not be always happy and flowers will not be always red. Flowers can blossom after withering, whereas people cannot become young again after getting aged. In the end, you can only find despair and death in this world. This is the life of everyone. To sum up, when you think that the world really exists and you pursue in it, you are bound to get a lot of bad heartfelt feelings, and these bad heartfelt feelings are all your troubles. Can be drawn. that all your troubles are built on a thought system that takes the world as real. So in order to break away from all your troubles, you have to change your view of the world first. And that's the purpose I depict the first two parts. Because only when you understand the world is only a dream and you are just a character in the dream, you will begin to learn and practice the other thought system recognizing the world is as illusory, so that you can gradually give up the thought system taking the world as illusory. Therefore, in this process, your heartfelt feelings will directly jump out of all bad experiences and jump straight into a heartfelt feeling that you have never experienced. The main attributes of this new heartfelt feeling is an eternal peace, without opposition and consistent. This is the reason why it is a thought system that can remove all troubles. This is also the reason that thinking always leads the way. Then again, there is this law in the world. If you give something to someone else, you will lose it. For example, if you give someone a birthday present, you can buy it with money first, and then give it to someone else, then it becomes someone else's. This is true in the world. To give is to lose. But here's an example that I have to state. It will give you a deeper understanding of what this law means. For example, you are a smoker. One day, you were smoking in the corridor of the company. It happened that one of your colleagues forgot to take cigarettes, and then he said to you, "I forgot to bring cigarettes today. Do you have any? Give me 1 inch." You answered, "Yes, I have. Please take mine." Then you pulled out cigarettes and gave him one, which is a common scene in life. Now let me change the situation. One day you were smoking in the corridor of the company. Your colleague came to you without cigarettes and said, "I forgot to bring cigarettes today. Do you have any? Give me 1 inch." You answered, "Yes, I have. Please take mine." And then, after you said that, you didn't do anything. At this time, your colleague saw you did not give him a cigarette and said to you, "Be quick. Give me one. Hey, what are you doing standing there?" You answered again, Okay, you take mine." And then you just stood there and did nothing. Finally, your colleague went crazy. He said to you, "Do you have any cigarettes? You stupid. Just silly stand there. If you have a cigarette, give it to me. Only when you give me one can you prove you have cigarettes." That is all this case is about. In this case, your colleague's last words are, "Only when you give me one can you prove you have cigarettes." It means that your colleague do not believe you have cigarettes any longer, unless you gave him one to prove it. So for you, you have to give it out to prove you have it. That is to say, what you have given proves what you have. That's how sins work in the world. Guilt is an intangible concept. When you attack others for changing them in your life, when you hate others or cursing them for retribution, you are giving the concept of guilt away to others. And you don't think it is a problem in life because you always believe that giving sins away to others doesn't make any difference to you. But is that really the case? Absolutely not. You can recall how you hate others in your life. When you hate others, do you have such thought? What bad things I did at that time? How could I have known him? If I hadn't been with him, I wouldn't be in such a situation. I really deserve it. This thought or similar thought is what actually happens to everyone. And this is the true law of working of guilt. Guilt, you cannot break away from the intangible concept of guilt because you have given it away into the others. On the contrary, when you give away the intangible concept of guilt into the others through thinking, you will have both a sense of guilt and self-hatred. It is like the example that I just gave. It is only when you give a cigarette to others that can prove you have cigarettes, because you are unable to give what you do not have, so what you can give to others guarantees what you have. That is how the guilt works in the world. It is in this way that sins appear out of nowhere in everyone's mind. If you don't believe the above laws, you can do an experiment now. You can think of someone now, and if the person you think of is your best friend, you will immediately feel comfortable. If you think of an enemy, you feel uncomfortable right away. This is an evidence of the law of guilt. Moreover, in this world, most negative feelings everyone experiences in life are derived from the process of driving the concept of guilt out. In short, the process is that you firmly believe that you are an innocent victim, and you are victimized by the unalterable sinners. You can't change their mind and cognition around you. This process is not only a mode of conviction, but also a kind of mental judgment that people adopt in order to achieve innocence. However, this process not only fails to lead to the acquisition of innocence, but also leads to the perception in the dark that one is a sinner and lives in a situation of being punished. which is the root of most of the troubles in the world. And this process is the same as the original pattern of the universe being projected by the subconsciousness in order to achieve innocence. The birth of the universe is a failure of the subconsciousness to drive guilt out in order to achieve innocence. The above narration is the law of the working of sins in this world, and it can also be extended, that is, what concept you give away to others in thinking will be what you'll have and experience. It is not just the law of sins in this world and also a fixed rule for mental judgment and heartfelt feelings, because each intangible concept first will be given away through your thinking, whether to others or to yourself, then you will experience this concept in your mind. So, the concepts you give away to others from your mind will be what you will have and experience, or the mental law that you cannot possibly transgress in the dreamed human world. And this mental law always applies to everyone, with no exception. You should ponder deeply over those above two insights, because they are the foundation upon which you can learn the other thought system. And these two insights can also show you that the most likely place to cause troubles and suffering is within the interaction of human relationships. Because if there is no human interaction, people don't push the sins to and fro. Certainly, you might say, my troubles don't come from relationships. For example, you might say, my trouble is that I can't earn more money, I can't afford a good car or house, which is not related to relationships. Well, then I ask you, if you don't have a family, a wife or a child, and you don't have any responsibilities, are you bothered by these? So, much of the troubles in your life comes from the interaction of interpersonal relationships, because sometimes you don't want to take pains to live up to others' expectations. And sometimes you worry that you will live in an undesirable situation if you can't meet other people's demands. Or you don't want to sacrifice too much for others because they simply ignore your efforts. So, in order to break away from all your troubles, you have to change your thinking pattern in the interaction of interpersonal relationships. Here I begin with a very common life incident to illustrate the basic thinking pattern of this thought system. I will first analyze this example and then respectively bring you into the attacker side and the attack side for illustration. One day, you were driving your car on the road, but a car driving slowly suddenly appeared in front of you, which stood in your way. Then you started pressing the horn, but the car still drove very slowly. At this time, you started to get angry, and then you found an opportunity to overtake the car and open the window to scold the driver. Can you drive? You idiot. You drive so slowly. What about the cars behind you? Then you closed the window and drove away. It was finished. First of all, I will make a brief description of all your mental activities and heartfelt feelings in the event. When you were driving on the road, you needed an environment that allows you to drive fast, but you were deprived of that environment by a slow car in front of you. At this time, you had a sense of deprivation. And then, because you couldn't drive fast, you might not be able to catch up time, then you had a certain amount of fear. At the same time, you thought it was the driver in front of you that caused your sense of deprivation and fear, so you pushed the sins against him and started hating him, and then you attacked him. So, in the process, your self-hatred and guilt would sometimes emerge, and maybe you would think, what immoral things have I done today? What a bad luck. I'm not happy with the slow car in front of me. These are all your mental activities and heartfelt feelings in this event. How do these mental activities and heartfelt feelings come about? What are the disadvantages brought by these thoughts and experiences for you? I will illustrate them in detail. Let us start with the consciousness. It is because of losing a perfect state that caused consciousness to have a great deficiency, then great guilt, hatred, and fear. At that time, the consciousness became the subconsciousness. Then, when these negative feelings went beyond the ultimate limits that the subconsciousness can endure, the subconsciousness projected guilt to form the universe and all living beings. And in the process, the subconsciousness simultaneously entered a body and gave rise to the self-consciousness. So, when all had been done, the self-consciousness had forgotten the subconsciousness, but the subconsciousness had not let go of the self-consciousness, because at that time the self-consciousness had not only become a fundamental tool for the subconsciousness to prove the universe true, it was also a fusion product generated by the mode of expelling sins of the subconsciousness. So, since the birth of the self-consciousness, it not only was being controlled by the subconsciousness, but also directly inherited the ability of expelling sins from the subconsciousness. In this way, after the birth of the self-consciousness, The subconsciousness had continually manipulated the self-consciousness to operate under its pattern of projecting sins. That is to say, an instinctive ways of thinking for the self-consciousness in the world was to giving away sins into other things and other bodies. That is why you were thinking like this in this case. However, your self-consciousness had never understood that the world outside you and all the bodies and images in it were only an exceptionally big dream your subconsciousness had fantasized, which was neither true nor false, even did not really exist either. So, your self-consciousness couldn't really expel the sins out of your body. On the contrary, in this dreamland magically produced by the subconsciousness, the concept you gave to others would be made out of nowhere and experienced by your mind, and the concept would remain in your subconsciousness at the same time. This is why you had such a heartfelt feeling in this case. In terms of this instance, the driver driving slowly in front of you was just an illusory image magically produced by your subconsciousness, and he did not exist at all. So when you gave sins to that illusion, the sins would be made out of nowhere and would be kept in your subconsciousness at the same time. You might think, well, it is nothing. I have already driven away, and I can forget about it in a minute, so it is over. There is no need to analyze it. Yes, this was the end of your personal thinking, and you could forget it in a few minutes. But this thing was far from being over for your subconsciousness, because your subconsciousness would not forget the sins given and owned because your mind had forgotten it. Then, the key point is what this guilt kept in the subconsciousness brings about. That is, the guilt in the subconsciousness, because sins must trigger the guilt. The kind of guilt is divided into two categories, including one that can be perceived by your individual thinking and the other that cannot be perceived. Take this case as an example. After you scolded the slow driver, you drove away. After a while, you forgot about it. This is the situation that the guilt was not perceived by individual thinking. However, if you scolded the slow driver, the driver opened the window and said to you, "Excuse me, I'm a new driver. So are you still angry?" At this point, you will think, why? Everyone was once a new driver. Why did I scold him? Or, the slow driver didn't respond to you at that time, and you calmed down afterwards to recall the incident, thinking that the slow driver did not know you, so he was not against you. At that time, you would have some regret. This is the situation that the guilt was perceived by your thinking. Certainly, no matter whether guilt was perceived by your thinking, sins were bound to trigger the guilt in your subconsciousness. Then, a more critical question arises: what did the guilt in subconsciousness bring about? That was punishment, for at the moment of the birth of the subconsciousness, it firmly believed that sins and guilt were to be punished and destroyed. So, for the subconsciousness, sins and guilt had to be removed through punishment. So what was punishment by the subconsciousness? In this case, you were driving on the road some day after you scolded the driver, and you were answering the phone, so you were driving very slowly and overtaken by a car while hearing a sound. "You idiot, can you drive?" This is the form of punishment for the guilt of the subconsciousness took. Certainly, this kind of punishment may vary in form, but the content of it would never change, and you would experience the adversity of being attacked and convicted by others on a certain date, or you would experience some kind of physical injury. Because your subconsciousness had already merged with your self-consciousness and always believed that you were this body. So, punishment was bound to revolve around your self-consciousness and this body. This is retribution for cause and effect, the common people often say, and it was also the correlation of sins, guilt, and punishment in the subconsciousness. So in this world, all the adversity and all the bad relationships that you have had in your life come from this circle of cause and effect, and sometimes you wonder why your destiny is like this. Actually, your bad fortune was caused by all your convictions and making sins in the past. Sometimes the past got across transmigration. These sins led to the guilt in the subconsciousness again and again. The guilt made all kinds of bad circumstances for you to experience, and these experiences included the pains of disease and death. That is the origin of destiny. Certainly, you also had a lot of good experiences in your life, which was because you did a lot of things benefiting others in the past. Sometimes the past got across transmigration. And the things benefiting others would produce hope retained in the subconsciousness, and then these hopes would make favorable circumstances in life for you to experience. Let me give you another example. Let's say that in your last life you once stole $10,000 from someone, and then you developed a certain amount of guilt in your last life, and that guilt naturally festered in your subconscious, and then that guilt manifested in your present life as a thing where you would have had the same value of money stolen from you by someone else. But even though you did steal money in a previous life, you did some good things. For example, after you stole the $10,000 in your previous life, you didn't spend it yourself, but instead, you gave it to one of your friends who was down and out and helped him start his own business. And you did this with the mindset of not asking for anything in return, so then, in your last life, you would have retained the love of not asking for anything in return within your subconscious mind because of this, and then this love would have mellowed within your subconscious mind to create hope. And this hope will then manifest in your lifetime as a situation where you were unemployed and a friend reached out and helped you out and got you a good job. Of course, you are going to lose that same value of money even if you find a good job, and this is how subconscious guilt and hope operate. It's also the reason why pain and pleasure go hand in hand in a person's life, or rather, it's the form and connotation of the saying that no good deed goes unpunished, no evil deed goes unpunished, which you'll see in people around you and in yourself, so I won't try to explain it too much. But in short, all your life experiences are the result of these subconscious feelings of guilt and hope. One point needs to be claimed, that how to get favorable circumstances is not what I want to illustrate. I have already made it clear that good life experiences and heartfelt feelings are not sustainable, and they are only based on bad experiences. Like the saying goes that happiness and bitterness is still bitterness. So, what I'm going to emphasize is just to tell you how you can break away from this dreamland of good versus bad. Then, on top of this real goal, you can get the fringe benefits, reversing bad fortune. Then, I'm going to use this example to illustrate the use of the other thought system and the benefits it can bring to you. I will repeat the example again. One day, when you were driving your car on the road, but a car driving slowly suddenly appeared in front of you, which stood in your way. Then you started pressing the horn, but the car was still driven very slowly. At that time, you started to get angry, and then you found an opportunity to overtake the car and open the window to scold the driver. Can you drive? You idiot. You drive so slowly. What about the cars behind you? Then you closed the window and drove away. In this example, if at some point when you are angry and experiencing a lot of negative emotions, if you can wake up, that is, if you can wake up to the fact that the world is just a dream presented by the subconscious mind, and if you can wake up to the fact that your mind is being manipulated by the subconscious mind while you are experiencing the whole thing, then you can stop thinking in accordance with the criminalization patterns of the subconscious mind. In this way, you can respond to what is in front of you with another kind of thinking, the kind of thinking that is going to teach you to think this way. First, the driver in front of me in a slow car was just an illusory image created by my subconscious mind. He was not really there. The incident of him driving in my way was also just an incident in my dream, so there was no need for me to hate and attack this driver in front of me in a dream. And if I convicted him, this sin would appear within my subconscious mind and would cause me many negative feelings. It is because this nearly infinite number of self-consciousnesses in the universe actually all originate from the same subconscious mind. Therefore, all the illusory self-consciousnesses in this universe retain the experience and memory that he was once a subconscious mind, and at the same time, he also retains the experience and memory that he was once the Son of the Lord. In other words, for you, this universe is only dreamed by you alone, because you were once that same subconscious. Whereas before that, you were that Holy Son who lived within the Lord. So by extension, there is only one life within the kingdom of heaven, and all of us are only the same Holy Son. Okay, after a brief account of what the kingdom of heaven looks like, let's get back to the book. When you have practiced these two types of thinking in the above incident, you will no longer attack the driver. Because when you are practicing true forgiveness, the driver in front of you will be reduced to an illusion and lose its meaning, and the world will also be reduced to an illusion and lose its meaning. In this way, you as the subject, your body and the self-consciousness to which it is bound, will also be reduced to an illusion and withdraw its meaning along with all the references outside your body. In addition, the subconscious mind, which is the illusion of you and the world, will also lose its meaning. At this point, your mind will be completely free of subconscious manipulation. Then you give purity and innocence within others, and in so doing, purity and innocence is instantly experienced by your mind. At this point, your mind jumps right out of all the negative experiences that are spawned by the pattern of condemnation and jumps right into a whole new mind experience that is one of eternal peace, without opposition, and always the same. Thus, one of your worries is lifted. In addition, After practicing true forgiveness and giving pure sinlessness, you will not create new sins. If there is no new sin, there is no new guilt. And if there is no new guilt, you will not have to go through new situations of being punished in the future, and thus your destiny is changed. This is the collateral benefit you can get. To summarize, true forgiveness thinking is to forgive that a person and an event in front of you is just an illusion, and giving purity and innocence is to see all people as sons of the Lord who have not left the kingdom of heaven, so that you can give the concept of purity and innocence within a person or persons. And the combination of these two types of thinking will not only allow you to step outside of all the negative feelings, but it will also allow you to find your own purity and innocence. It's just like a conviction, only this time you first withdraw the meaning of the whole world of illusion and self-consciousness from your thinking, and then you give the concept of pure innocence within someone else. So at this point, not only will you have pure innocence, you will simply become pure innocence, because everything in the world has been forgiven by you, and all that is left is the pure innocence that you have given. So, with true forgiveness, you become whatever you give. Of course, the sign that you have become pure and sinless is that your mind experiences eternal peace, and that peace can only be experienced if you personally exercise it. I remind you that the practice of true forgiveness and giving innocence can be postponed for beginners, because they find it difficult to immediately apply the two thoughts to similar situations. In the case of the car driving, if you were not vigilant when you were angry, you simply scolded the driver and drove away. Then when you came home and calmed down, if you could be vigilant at that time, and then practice the above two kinds of thinking modes for that incident is completely viable, because this kind of postponed practice can also melt most of the sins you gave away just now, and your mind could instantly experience the eternal peace. This kind of postponed practice is absolutely beneficial, and it is also the only way which must be passed for beginners. I'm going to bring you into the role of being attacked to illustrate, because you are in the role of being attacked many times in life, but before I explain that, I'm going to start with analyzing what the concept of counterattack after you've been attacked is. One day you were driving on the road and answering a phone, so you were driving very slowly. Just then, a car behind you overtook you and a voice came out of the car. "You idiot! Can you drive?" When you heard someone scold you, you got angry and cursed back, "Are you going to the funeral by driving so fast? Did I provoke you?" The instance was finished. First of all, I will analyze the psychological process of the counterattack side. When you were driving, you needed an environment free of distractions, but suddenly a driver was scolding you. Not only did you lose an undisturbed environment, but also suffered attack and conviction. At that time, your sense of deprivation, anger, and hatred emerged simultaneously, and you took action to counterattack. In the process, your mind would not only experience a lot of negative feelings, but sometimes you would experience self-hatred, and you may think, "What unlucky life I have! I was just driving a car and cursed by others." These are the mental activities and heartfelt feeling of counterattack. From the above analysis, we can see that there is no way out to attack back, because when you counterattacked others, you still dealt with the problem according to the conviction mode, then you would still make new sins, and the sins would still generate new guilt and new punishment circumstances for you to experience. So, if you could suddenly wake up to realize this circumstance to be an illusory one displayed by a previous sin in your subconsciousness, then you can deal with this event by applying true forgiveness and giving innocence. Think of it this way. First, the scene in which I was attacked and convicted by a driver was just a phantom situation presented by some old guilt in my subconscious mind. This situation was just a dream that did not exist, and this driver who scolded me was just a phantom image created by my subconscious mind. He did not exist, so I would not have fought back against him. In this way, I will be able to forgive myself for dreaming this event. Secondly, I will cross over his illusory image to see his essence, that he is a spiritual being in the kingdom of the Lord's heaven, that he is within the same Lord with me, that he is pure and sinless, and that he and I have never left the kingdom of heaven at all. When you think and act like this, not only can you break away from the control of the subconsciousness and acquire the peace of mind, you can also defuse the previous sin in the subconsciousness, because a punishing circumstance of being attacked and convicted which is manifested by a previous sin has been forgiven and dissolved by you, so the previous sin will disappear from your subconsciousness. Besides, this time you do not convict someone again, so you won't have to suffer some new punishing circumstances in the future. However, it should be noted that even if you are going to experience similar circumstances of being attacked in the future, they are only generated by other previous sins in your subconsciousness. So, You don't have to be perplexed. When you have forgiven a previous sin, that sin disappears forever. The application of the above thinking can also be delayed for beginners. For example, if you drove away after you fought back, and then you turn to realize that you didn't apply true forgiveness and give innocence yesterday another day, then it is completely viable to practice for yesterday's event, because it can defuse most of the sins you've given. And it is hard for beginners to feel comfortable when using these two modes of thinking in your life for the first few times, because you are already used to taking the world as real and convicting others. Then it is very difficult for you to reverse this ingrained wrong mode. But you have to practice it because it is the only way you wake up from your big human dream. Certainly, if you think the world can be accepted, and you are willing to spend a few more decades or lifetimes in this dreamland, that is fine. But when you can't relish the dream anymore, you will naturally and seriously study and practice this thought system out of the dream. At the end of this illustration, I conclude with the most basic model of true forgiveness in the disappearance of the universe. You don't really exist there. You're just the image I make. If I convict you and see you as the cause of my problems, then the guilt and fear that I hold must exist in me. Since God and I have never been separated, I should have forgiven something that both of us do not actually do. And here is nothing but innocence. I have joined with the Holy Spirit in peace. In the next part, I will first outline the level of spiritual experience and the connotation of the theological word, Holy Spirit. This illustration will enable you to understand the general steps of awakening from the big dreams of life. Then, I'll go on to show other modes of thinking in this new thought system by using common examples of life. Finally, several points should be claimed. 1. The mode of thinking about true forgiveness and giving innocence demonstrated here is not fully applicable to the field of human work and law, especially the field of law. There is a set of independent rules in the field of work and law. In the following, I will illustrate how the field of work and law is connected with this thought system. 2. Your body won't disappear by practicing the thought of true forgiveness, because this mode of thinking is only for your mind and your subconsciousness, but not for your body. 3. The thinking of true forgiveness only has one connotation which is different from other thinking modes. In this case, if you think in the following way without attacking someone, I don't want to make fuss with him. I'm not angry. There is no need for me to talk with such a low-quality driver. This kind of thinking is not really true forgiveness thinking, because its connotation is still the giving and possession of sins. So you should note that there is only one kind of the connotation of true forgiveness. That's it for today's sharing. In this video, the main concepts I present originate from two books, A Course in Miracles and The Disappearance of the Universe series. The Disappearance of the Universe serves as the main supporting textbook for A Course in Miracles and is easy to understand and relate to. The case study I'm sharing today, on the other hand, comes from a book I authored, The Way to Miracles: Awakening Exercises to Lift All the Worries of the World. If you are interested in this godly thinking for lifting your worries, you can search for the book online or visit the Path of Miracles website, which is the URL provided at the bottom of the video. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.